Hello. So I am back. I've been away for a little bit, and we're going to talk about that tonight. So the name of my series is Life, Leases, Law, and we're going to talk about all three of those tonight. So I just want to welcome everyone to my first episode of Life, Leases, and Law. So if you follow my channel or been on my channel, I've talked about the 3-day notice process, have you paid your rent? I talked about the eviction process. So tonight I'm going to be talking about the new rent increases that's going to be starting August 1st. And we're going to talk about that shortly. But first, I just want to say my name's Itonya. I'm a realtor. I go by Real Estate by Itonya, but I also do tenant placement, and that where I help owners find renters and I help renters find places to stay. Call that Bay Area Rental Match. Bay Area Rental Match. So I'm going to be talking about that tonight. So if this is your first time here, welcome. If you've been following me for a while, even though I took a little break, but I'm back now. So go ahead and grab your tea or your coffee or whatever you're drinking, because every Thursday I'm committing to spending some time talking about life, leases, and law. So we're about to have, I call this Tea with Tea. So we're going to talk about that, what's been going on with me, and then we got to go into the law, and then we're going to talk about leases. So before we jump into today's topic, let's have a little tea. It's been several months since I've gone live, and a lot has happened. I've been busy growing my business, Bay Area Rental Match. That's my tenant placement. So I don't do property management, but I do help owners find a tenant for their unit. And I've been doing that for over 7 years, but it was just something I've always done. I didn't really talk about it. I didn't really promote it. I have a website, but I need to update it and things like that. But it's just something that I always did. And I'm a realtor, so I focused on the sales side too. And this is just something that I would call an income between sales. So when I needed income between sales, I always reverted back to the tenant placement, because I tend to could get a unit rented within 2 to 4 weeks, and you get a quicker paycheck or something. So I did that. So now what I've been doing is really focusing on Bay Area Rental Match and really making that into a whole company and everything. But part of the reason why this focus has happened is because one of the reasons is there's like a lot of questions about renting, leasing, California housing laws that I wanted to create a space for to talk about. I think sometimes both sides, we miss the communication because they don't understand what's going on. So on my page, I try to talk about a lot about that to make it to where people could really understand what's happening. So part of the reason, also the other part of the reason why this happened, so I was working for a company, it's a nonprofit, and I found out the second week in January that I may get laid off at the end of the month. So it's like 2 weeks I may be getting laid off. So I was like, okay. But I knew because I worked for a nonprofit, we were waiting on the county funding, and they held us as long as they could. But I was like, okay. I wasn't being optimistic or anything. I wasn't trying not to be, but I was like, okay, we've been waiting on a county contract to renew for a few months now. So I said, I don't think it's going to renew in 2 weeks. But I was like, okay. So I waited it out, and I came to work. I showed up, did what I had to do and everything. And the last day of work, I showed up, did what I had to do. And at the end, I knew that January 31st was going to be my last day. I knew that. They already warned me. I already knew. So what I did is I found out 2 weeks prior, the third week in January, I believe, I went live on TikTok, and I was consistent all the way January, all the way February. And you'll see that on my page where I'm talking about 3-day notices and the new laws that came into effect in 2026, and what you do if you get evicted, and helping landlords and helping renters. And I got a few DMs of people and let me know their situation that I answered. And then what ended up happening is February, laid off, no income, coming in. Well, it was a little side things I did, so always something coming in. But the tenant placement started growing, and it was like, okay. So I had old owners, housing providers, owners calling me, hey, I got a vacancy. Can you help me get it rented? So that sustained me for the month of February. And then in March, the job that laid me off asked if I could come back temporarily for March. So I did that. And then towards the end of March, I wanted to be strategic, and I didn't know if they were going to ask me to come back full-time, but I asked if I could come back part-time, and then that way I could work there part-time and also grow my business, Bay Area Rental Match. So that's what I've been doing. Right now I have like the most clients I've ever had. So if you're looking for a rental in California, Northern California, specifically Alameda County, hit me up. Right now, most of my rentals is in Oakland, California, but I never know. It's just been growing, and it's been amazing. So that's the life part. That's what's been going on with me, laid off to tenant placements, and it's going great. The lease part. So I was saying that I have a Bay Area Rental Match where I focus on tenant placement. Like I said, I don't do property management. I focus on placement, and I do everything for that except collect rents. You don't call me if you have a maintenance issue. That's the property management side. But for my owners, I do the market analysis. I will the advertising, the marketing, the unit. I help you. I do the showings, I do the lease, the rental verification, and the move-in inspection. So I do all of that, and for a small fee. And usually I could get a unit rented like in less than 30 days or less. So it tends to be some income coming in, opposed to when I was on the sales side, selling houses or helping buyers, that could take months. And then sometimes the buyer decide I'm going to wait because they can't find a place. And then you spend 6 months and we don't get paid. We don't get paid until we close a deal. So even with my tenant placement, I don't get paid until I find a tenant, we get it leased and rented. And at the very end, the tenant that moved in and paid their deposit and paid their move-in, and then I get paid. And so it's a lot of spending time with no income, or what you feel like you're working for free, right? And even if I don't find a tenant, or the owner decides they don't want to go with me or let me go, I don't get paid for all the time that I spent in the work that I done, right? But that's the gamble we take in real estate, because that's how California has it set up. I can't ask for a deposit and do all this stuff. So it's fine. No complaints here. I've never had a unit that I haven't been able to rent out, and I've never had an owner fire me. So that never happened. So with the lease side, I just want to talk about what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be doing this series of the rentals of the week. And back before the pandemic, I did this. I used to show the rentals of the week, what's out there. And I stopped right before the pandemic. But if I would have kept going, that would have been just power, because we was locked indoors, but people still had to move. That time it was like crazy. It was a busy time. I was working for a property management company doing their showings, and we would get so many people You coming from San Francisco to across the bridge to the other side looking for houses because now they could work from home. They didn't have to go into the office or anything, so they needed bigger spaces. And the houses we had on this side was comparable to the studio 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms that they were paying on the other side of the bridge. So it was like a busy time, a busy time during that time. So right now I did rentals of the week then, so I'm bringing that back. But right now I'm going to be talking about my rentals that I have, because I have about 8 right now that I'm trying to get rented. I'm also familiar with the housing choice vouchers. So if you have a voucher and you're looking for a place, I got some 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms designed for you. So DM me and hit me up. So one thing that I'm seeing right now in the rental market is the renters, you guys got options. And because there's so many options out there, I find that they're being a little bit more selective on what it is that they want, because there's a lot of rentals out there. Now, the issues that I'm hearing that they're finding is they can't get nobody on the phone. People not calling them back. And they like, I'm trying to move, I'm trying to rent, but nobody calling me back. So that's the issue that I'm hearing about it. I tend to answer my phone, respond, and that things, because I know that's an issue, and I know that a lot of I don't know if I would call them competitors, but the people who do the same thing that I do, a lot of times that's the issue, is they don't answer the phone. I answer my phone. So that's what I'm seeing right now. There's really a renter's market. So you have options out there. Now, getting approved could take some time. Being able to see the unit, to get in touch with someone could take some time. But once you do and you in there, the process, I think, goes pretty smoothly. Let me know in the comments any horror stories you had when trying to rent. And I would love to hear them and talk about that. So some of the things that for owners that I'm having, especially with owners that I'm working with, is, and it's like this on the sales side too, is if you have a unit and it's priced too high, the renter will sit on the market for a while. If you have a unit that isn't ready, it could take some time to get it rented, or it has you don't have parking, you don't have a laundry facility, you don't have some of those amenities that people will want, it may take longer to rent. And if that's happening, then you probably just need to lower the price. And I've done that. Like, some people would sacrifice some of those amenities if the price is right. So if you're an owner and you're listening, or an investor, and you're having a hard time getting your place rented, take a look at the price. I know within 7 to 10 days, based on the interaction I get, if I'm priced too high or not. And then sometimes one unit, I'm getting a lot of people inquiring about it. I'm even getting some showings, but they're not renting. And that's pretty much because although I tell them the square footage, they don't understand what that square footage is, and they don't understand what that square footage is. So they may decide not to get the unit because it's smaller than what they were anticipating. However, if I lower the price and that price is right, it'll get rented. That's what happened before. So if the property is priced correctly, is professionally marketed, and you respond quickly to inquiries, they tend to get rented much faster, and that's what I try to do. And I get owners with me where they have to have it rented right now. It's like my mortgage, I can't afford 2 mortgages, I have to get this rented. And I had a 30-day deadline, got it rented in 27. In July, I challenged myself to get 6 units rented by August, and I got 3 more to go, maybe 2. I'm waiting on an owner to see if they're going to approve this applicant. And then one of my other units, I'm showing it to someone Friday and Saturday. So let's cross our fingers, say a prayer that this applicant like the unit and get it rented. And then that means I would have just about made my goal, but I have 1 unit It's a 3-bedroom, and I'm waiting for that special person to rent this unit. So right now I have a few different rentals available. Bay Area Rental Match. It's not updated. It's going to be updated tonight, but I do have an Instagram page, Bay Area Rental Match, and you'll see the rentals that I have available. And I'm working on updating my website. So if you Google me, Bay Area Rental Match, I will come up, but I need to update the website. That's what's happening there. And now I want to talk about the law. So we're talking about something that affects a lot of California landlords and a lot of tenants, the new rent increase limits that go into effect August 1st. So that's it's the end of July. So that's happening in a couple of days. We have the new laws that's going into effect. So I want to spend some time talking about that. So the rent increases is for all of California. Sorry, I'm typing something. A note that I forgot. So the rent increase is for all of California. And I would say 90% of the rent increase is the same for all of California. The only differences is if you're in a city that has rent control or rent stabilization, then those rent increases is a little bit lower. If the building is like within 15 years built, they don't, these rent increases, within 15 years built, they don't, these rent increases and a few other exceptions that won't apply to them. My alarm just went off. I thought that should have been off. Am I still live? Okay, I'm still live. Nothing was moving. I was like, did that alarm do something? Okay. So what California do is it's called the CPI. So that's the Consumer Price Index. And what that is, they measure inflations, and that's published by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. And it tracks the price consumers pay for everyday goods and services, such as housing, food, transportation, medical care, and utilities. So my focus is the housing, right? So the CPI is So California has the AB 1482, which was put in place to control the rents and give tenant protection. So most of California is under AB 1482, unless you're in one of those cities, like I said, that has rent control. So when you're in a city that has rent control, they could control how much of a rent increase is imposed. So they can't go higher than what California already set, but they could go lower. And that's what a lot of cities that has rent control or rent stabilization does. So right now under AB 1482, so this is the California law, the rent increase starting August 1st, 2026 and goes to July 31st, 2027. So I'm going to say most of the cities is like this unless you have rent control, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit. They could set that timeline different. So right now, California, under AB 1482, the rent increase this is how the percentage that they could raise your rent is from August 1st, 2026 to July 31st, 2027. And then probably about in May or June, we started knowing what the rent increase or decrease was going to be. Well, I guess it's not really a decrease. When I say decrease, what I mean is right now the CPI is 8.8%. Last year it was 6.3%. So sometimes the percentage may decrease, but this year it went back up. So what that means is most cities in California, most counties, cities, unless you're in a rent control city, they could increase your rent on your anniversary date by 8.8%. And when I say your anniversary date, I feel like it's always some clarification that means what I mean is if you rent, so you're on your first year in this new place and your rent started in September, you rented from September and now September is coming around again, they could increase your rent by 8.8% if they decide to take the maximum and you're not in a rent control city. So a lot of owners, sometimes owners, especially my small owners, they don't really raise the rent. They don't do the increases. And then some owners do. Some owners may do more than they're supposed to do, not knowing. Like some owners like to do a 10%. And I'm not saying you can't do a 10% increase, but it depends on the city, and you may have to get some additional approval to do that. So it's better to stay within the CPI that the California law sets every year. So now what I want to do is we're going to talk about some cities that has rent control in them, and maybe you don't know, and I'm mostly dealing with Alameda and Contra Costa counties because I'm in Alameda County. If I didn't talk about a county you in, I could let you what the rent increase is if you're under rent control and that stuff. Because we do have some cities here and there that is under rent control, and the numbers is going to be different. So some of the cities that has rent control in Alameda County is Alameda, Berkeley, Hayward, Oakland, Leandro starting January 1st, 2027. I'm in Leandro, that affects me. And in Contra Costa, you got Antioch, Richmond, and Concord. So if you need to know what the rent increase amount is for a different county, let me know. I could get that to you. So let's talk about it. So like I said, 90% of California is 8.8%. So it's a 5% increase plus the CPI, which is 3.8%. And every year this changes. So the cities that has rent control, they could have a lower rent amount. So let's take Alameda, for example. So Alameda has rent control in there. So their max that they're saying that owners could raise the rent is 2.4%. And that for Alameda, they decided to start that September 1st. So while everything else is starting August 1st, Alameda's don't start until September 1st, 2.4%. Berkeley right now, my notes gave me the wrong amount. I know Berkeley. So Berkeley goes from January 1st, 2026 to December 31st, 2026. So they do this whole year, and theirs is 1%. So owners cannot raise people rent more than 1%. There are some exceptions to the rule depending on what the unit is and that thing, but most of it is 1%. So if you are paying $1,500, that means the owner can't raise your rent more than $15. We're regulated, but that also means PG&E, the garbage company, the water company, they're not regulated. So they'll impose a 2, 5, 10, 15% increase, but the owners is only able to raise their rent $15. So I'm going to be biased. I feel like that's a little unfair. I understand rent is high, California. I know I'm going to hear it all. I get it. I know. But when you're trying to run a business and someone is telling you, no, you can't raise your rates. Just think of the restaurants right now. What if the law came and said, I know food is going up. I know tariffs is high. I know fuel is up. But you can't raise your food prices because people need to eat. Therefore, you can't do it. So that's what landlords, they face all the time. Landlords in real estate is one of the only markets that has a lot of regulations on it where we can't do increases. I could be wrong. Tell me in the comments what other job field that has regulations imposed on it where they have a limit on how much they could raise their rent. And let me also say this. I haven't put my disclaimer out there that this is not legal advice. I'm just giving you some educational advice on my 25 years in property management and things that I know. So this isn't legal advice, so don't quote me on stuff. But the totals that I'm giving you for the rent increases, they real. They real. You could Google it if you like. But this is set up by California, so it comes out every year. So I told you the cities that has rent control. So it's not a whole bunch. So most of them do go by the AB 1482 law of the 8.8%. However, you have some cities like Hayward has rent stabilization. So in the city of Hayward, and what Leandro plan on doing, Hayward is like, you can't raise the rent more than 5%. I don't care what the state is saying, you can't raise it more than 5% in the city of Hayward. And then you have to put a petition if you do want to raise it more than 5%. In San Leandro, the last I saw what they're proposing is they want to put a 3% cap on rent increases, meaning you can't raise your rent more than 3% in San Leandro. That don't start until January, not until January. And I was thinking of one more city. I believe it is Concord. I know it was another 5. So Concord have a 5% cap on increases. Now there are some exceptions to the rule. It's depending on the property, the type, how is it listed, and that stuff. Single family homes usually don't. Most single family homes under AB 1482 don't qualify for this. I'm trying to think of my cities with rent control. I don't think they're imposing this on single family homes. So if you're renting a single family home, they could raise your rent 10%, 50 higher. I don't think most people do. I could be wrong. Let me know in the comments if you got like a higher rent increase. And did I say Richmond has a rent increase is 1.5%? One is Richmond. And also for Antioch, for some reason Antioch, every 2 months they change the rent increase. So it's 3% or 60% of CPI, but it changes every 2 months. So if you're in the city of Antioch and you're an owner and you're like, how much can I increase it? I recommend you go to the Rent Housing Board in Antioch and see. They usually put how much you could raise the rent for these 2 months. And if you're a renter and you're trying to find out if you got a legal rent increase, you can also go ahead and check on their website as well. But all the other cities in California, in Alameda or Contra Costa, 8.8% is the max. And like I said, some owners don't take that, some owners do. And then there's something called bank increase. So if an owner hasn't increased your rent in a year or two, some cities allow them to be able to bank that. So if you didn't get an increase 2-3 years ago, then they may be able to give you one large sum of an increase. And most cities have a cap on how much that is. But I don't want to confuse you. Let's just focus on rent increases right now. So if you have any questions about the rent increases, and I didn't cover a county that you in, just let me know in a comment, send me a DM, and I will answer those questions. And for the AB 1482, they imposed that in California where they had a rent increase limit 10 years ago. So this year it's up. So the AB 1482 is getting renewed. So we're not sure right now what it's going to be. We heard talks that AB 1482 is now going to include single-family homes, because at first it didn't include single-family homes, condominiums, and townhouses. But now we hear that they may be including that. So we're waiting for that to come out. I thought it was coming out this summer, but I'm waiting for that. But I'll be back on when it comes out, because that's going to be a big deal, because that's covering all of California and what the Tenant Protection Act is going to be, what the rent increase limit is going to be, and who's going to pose and everything. So I can't wait to see that. I was looking at my notes to see if I covered everything, because I wasn't looking at my notes. But I think that I covered everything that I wanted to say about the rent increases. If you have questions, you can always DM me. If you're looking for a rental, go to Bay Area Rental Match. And next week, I'm going to be coming talking about some other things. And if there's things you want me to talk about, let me know. I'm trying to come back, be interactive every week. I plan on having like some Q&A time once I get some followers. I know the information I tend to talk about doesn't affect everybody on a daily basis. It comes in handy when you need it. When you get that rent increase and you're like, Itonya, I got a 10% rent increase. Can they do that? Or something like that. So I'll be here when those times come. And that's what happened with the 3-day notices, right? I didn't really hear anything. And then someone ran into a situation and they wanted to know, what should I do? What can I do? So I talk about that on my page if that is your situation, and you could go and take a look at that. So if there are no questions, I'm going to get ready to end this live. I want to thank everyone for joining me tonight. I'll be back next Thursday, I promise. I'm excited to bring Life, Leases, and Law back every Thursday at 7:30. Next week, I'm going to be talking about a little bit about the house and church vouchers, the myth and the facts about those. And we'll discuss what every landlord should know, answer common questions, and clear up a few misconceptions about that. If tonight was helpful, I really appreciate if you'll follow my page, share the live or share the page, or send it to someone that may need the information. If you're an owner, DM me. I could help you get your place rented. If you're an owner, let them know about me. And if you have a landlord and you think that maybe they're not following some of the rules or whatever, I could talk to them too and give them some tips. You can also leave me a question in the comments if you come across something. But until then, we gotta grab our tea, and I will be back next week. So this week I'll be making posts all throughout the week. I'm gonna update that Bay Area rental match page so you can see what rentals I have available. If you're someone looking for a place to stay, especially in the city of Oakland, please let me know. Right now, all my rentals is in Oakland. I do have a couple of associates that may have units somewhere else. So if you're looking, I may be able to refer you to someone else. So until next week, until then, grab your tea, stay informed, and I'll see you next Thursday for Life, Leases, and Law. Have a great evening. Just want to put a disclaimer, and I'm going to kind of repeat it a couple of times. I am not an attorney. I am not an attorney, so I'm not giving any legal advice. I'm just sharing with you education, things that I've learned in my 25 years in this business and doing it. So I don't want no one to get confused. This series is going to be called Life, Leases, and Law.